Don Global presents the DG Recruit podcast on everything headhunting and recruitment. Achieve the life and career you envision. What's up, game changers? It's your host, Don, founder of Don Global, the headhunting and career coaching company helping you achieve the life and career you envision. In today's podcast, I'm going to go over KPIs that my company set for me, as well as the KPIs that I achieved. This is to give you an idea of what top agencies expect their headhunters to do, and I'm talking specifically about permanent direct hire. So I never did any temp placements in my life. I wish I did. Unfortunately, it was not something that was allowed. We were not allowed to do that. We were only allowed to do what we were assigned. So I was assigned the direct hire desk, permanent recruitment, and I had no clients. Starting off, I had 0 clients, literally walking into the door, 0 clients. And the reason was because I joined a British company that was just setting up in the US. And this is very typical. Lots of companies come from the UK, come and set up business here because there's just so much more money to be made here. It's like gold mine for recruiters, for agency recruiters. So this is one of the most amazing places to run a recruitment business because of how high our salaries are. Our salaries are insane compared to like global, right? So all these British companies came to the USA right around 2005, 2008. I joined in 2010. By the time I joined, there was already like 40 to 50 staff in the New York office. They were just starting to hire nationally. And these Brits, I mean, they know what they're doing because in the UK, recruitment is a very mature business. In the USA, I would say it's still a very nascent industry. It still is because a lot of the general public doesn't know what a headhunter is. Whereas in the UK, I'm not kidding you, when I went there for the first time in, I think it was 2018, I literally would ask someone for directions and I looked at him and he was wearing a blue suit and I was like, "Are you a headhunter?" He was like, "Yep." That is how common it is to bump into headhunters in the UK. Literally, there's just like a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. But in the USA, people still don't know what it is unless you come from a family that knows what it is, or you come from a friend, a friend who's somehow in the recruiting business. Other than that, you would not know what it is. I didn't, and I went to a business school, which is kind of ridiculous, right? I went to like a legit business school, and I never heard about recruitment as a business model. So this is still a nascent industry in the USA. And so when I joined, the British people had already came to the USA and taught us this is how you build your book of business, but they also set you up with KPIs. Now, I have never worked at an American recruitment firm. I don't know what kind of KPIs they set, but I can tell you what I was set at a British recruitment firm, and we can start there. So day one, I go into the office, I have 0 clients, I have 0 candidates, and you literally just are given some tools, which is like, here is an advertising tool that you can put up ads. So per day, you're supposed to put up 1 ad a day. So that's how many advertisements you should make a day. So you are advertising your recruitment business, your roles, your recs, 1 advertisement a day. That's putting it up on a job board or wherever. I don't know. We just had a system and it was like, put it up. So it was okay, put it up. And then you're supposed to add 10 managers a day. So this is like, again, you have no clients, you have no recs, you need managers. You need managers. Why do you need managers? You need managers because you have to call them, you have to email them, you have to meet them, you have to sell to them. That is your customer. So you need managers, hiring managers. So the minimum is 10 a day. You have to add a minimum of 10 a day. Assuming you work 5 days a week, that's 50 managers a week. So that's the company KPI. The company also sets you up with a KPI for meetings. So, hey, we're going to pay for you. Our company at the time would pay for a zip car. So let's say you wanted to meet a client in Jersey. You would have to likely take a zip car because, the New Jersey Transit doesn't take you everywhere. I started off in 2011 where Uber wasn't even like that big of a lifestyle thing at the time. So anyways, Zipcar was like, we'll help you reimburse it. I had a car at the time. So for me, it was like fine. It was totally fine for me to just go. I would just drive and I would get reimbursed for gas, tolls, mileage, whatever. So meetings were 5 a week.
that was the KPI. If you could get 5 candidates or clients, and that was interchangeable. So it was like 5 meetings in general. Ideally, 3 of them were client meetings, but if you get 5 candidate meetings, it's not the end of the world. So the idea is more like book meetings, get in front of people, learn about the market, start like making your rounds. So 5 meetings was the company benchmark. Other KPIs that we were given, 100 dials a day. So what's a dial? A dial is calling on the phone, right? So we have these landlines, and these landlines, you can track how many phone calls people are making per day. So you're making phone calls, you're dialing 100 times. Now you could dial one person 10 times and that would count as 10 dials. You could call 100 different people one time and that would be considered 100 dials. So this KPI to me was kind of like, I guess it just helps you call people more. A lot of people do fake KPIs, so they'll call their friends 10 times a day, which I think is a joke. It's a laughable joke. Like if you're coming to work to cheat yourself and to play games with your own KPIs, you're not screwing anyone over except your future self. So I never, ever effed with that. I mean, we had people that got fired for faking their KPIs. They would be known to call their mom for an hour, and that would count as an hour-long phone call. This is some really dumb stuff that people did. And I'm sure people still do if they're on this type of setup, which again, you're only hurting yourself. So wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend you actually trying to live up to the KPIs for the purity's sake. But anyways, so 100 dials was pretty typical. Then, assuming you get people on the phone, you want to talk to them at least, for 2 hours. So that was the phone times. So you call 100 dials, maybe you get 50 of them. And then these 50 people, you talk to them for 2 hours. That is not how many people you talk to a day. It'd be impossible to talk to 50 people a day. You probably end up having some very good conversations, 30, 40-minute conversations with one person every other hour, right? So 2 hours phone times, I would probably say that's a pretty solid standard. It's a pretty solid minimum, because if you think about it, you got 8 hours in the day, assuming you're working an 8-hour day, 2 hours of the phone, it's not that much. So 2 hours minimum, I think that's a pretty standard KPI, 2 hour phone times. Other KPIs we were given were send outs. So what's a send out? I released this course called the Most Placeable Candidate course. And that's what a send out is. You're sending out your most placeable candidate to your client network. Remember those 10 managers you're adding a day? You're now sending candidates to those managers. So in that scenario, you are then sending all of these send outs, these candidate profiles. Of course, they're blinded to the hiring managers, and the hiring managers are receiving them. So it was you're supposed to do at least 5 a week. So 1 a day. Now, obviously 1 a day could be going to 300 people, could be going to 1,000 people, could be going to 25 people, right? So it just depended. So that one is a bit of a confusing KPI, because send outs, it's you want to send out different profiles per day. But it's hard to say how many people are receiving it, because sometimes you can send really targeted send outs. So you'll send one candidate to a specific client. That's one person. So that's a 1-to-1 send. Or sometimes it's I got a candidate. I want to send them to 30 of the people in the same geographic region. So that becomes 30 send outs. That one is a bit tricky, right? Because it's I would at least like to send 5 times a week, but maybe the recipients are anywhere from 1 person to 300 people at once. So play with that as you will, but send outs, absolutely, you should be doing it per day. You should be absolutely sending out new people per day, right? To try to get clients interested. In terms of output, you should be targeting on a direct hire desk that is relatively middle to upper class in terms of the actual salary band. You should be targeting 8 interviews a week. If you do 8 interviews a week, you are laughing all the way to the bank. If you are able to get 8 interviews a week on a pretty solid desk, that's amazing. You're going to do 2 placements at least. You're going to definitely do at least 2 perm placements a month if you got 8 interviews a week. I mean, at that hit rate, again, depends how good your hit rate is, my hit rate is really good. So if I do 8 interviews a week, I'm likely doing 4 to 5 placements a month. Like my hit rate was super accurate, as in like every single candidate I represented got interviews. Like it would be very rare that I would represent a candidate and they wouldn't be asked to interview, right? So it really just depends how you do this darn thing. But the important thing is to start monitoring, how good your response rates are. Like, how good are my submittals? Am I getting 100% hit rate? Am I getting a 80% next stage rate, right? Or am I able to just get first line interviews and then it drops off? Because that will hit your placement ratio, right? So everything is kind of interactive, and quality definitely matters, because if you don't have good quality candidates, then of course your engagement ratios go down, the placement ratios go down, because your submits might be high, but they're not good enough. And if they're not good enough, they're not going to get hired. Like, you can only fool clients so much. My philosophy is, why bother? Like, why bother representing anybody that isn't monetizable? I don't. Like, if I know I'm not going to profit off of this profile, I'm not going to service this candidate. There's just like 0 point to doing that, because like I don't like KPIs for the sake of KPIs. I want there to be a ROI on my time. So I think that was one of the key philosophies that I took when I became a recruiter. It's like day one, I get to work, and kind of like what my mom told me ever since I was little. She's like, why would you ever cheat yourself, right? Like, you need to start understanding that, like, you are not gaming the system. You are just cheating yourself if you don't figure out this stuff and become successful, right? Like, if you don't put that onus on yourself, you're not screwing me over. You're just screwing yourself over. So when I got to work as a producer, that's how I felt. I was like, all these people slacking off at work, they're not screwing anyone else except themselves. And I'm not going to be a chump. I'm not going to be one of those people. If I'm coming into work, I'm going to make this stuff work for me. Like, all of these KPIs my company gave me, I'm going to figure out how to do this thing. I'm going to figure out how to convert these KPIs into money, and I'm going to make the most. Like, that, what else would be the point, right? And another big motivator that was driving me at the time was that I'm an Asian female. Politically, there is absolutely nothing helping me to get ahead in my career. Politically, nothing. It was hard for me to get hired because people were just like, didn't know what to do with me. I was very unique of a hire. And I was like one of 2 Asians, like, any given time. I was like one of the very rare billing female managers in my generation. And so I knew that if I wanted to survive in this industry, the only saving grace is billing. That's it. Like, if I can bill a lot of money, there's nothing anyone can do to hurt me politically. There's nothing anyone can do to hurt me socially or politically, because whoever bills the most gets the final say. And so that was the philosophy that drove me to then take the KPIs and decide what I'm going to do. So what I lived for was to exceed my KPIs. First of all, hit your KPIs, but at the minimum, you have to think about how you're going to exceed them. Like, what your company gives you, to me, is a bare minimum. Like, if your company says add 10 managers, that's a bare minimum number. That isn't a target number. That's a minimum standard. Whereas a lot of people will fail to even hit the minimum, the target, right? In my mind, I'm like, why are you not doubling up on these numbers? You're only wasting your own time, right? But a lot of people are struggling to even hit the target KPIs, which to me is laughable. Because I'm like, you already have the target. The answers to the test are right in front of you. Exceed these numbers. That's how you're going to become top biller. This easy math, right? Like, you want to bill double the average person. Do double the amount of work. Easy math, right? Like, shoot for the stars, whatever, end up on the moon, whatever. That whole idea. So when my managers told me to add 10 managers a day, I was like, without clients, I will not have any recs. Without recs, I will not have any business. Adding 10 managers a day, that's not enough. That is like hardly enough. That's 50 a week. It's not a lot of people. Like, I'm going to add 30 a day. So that's what I started thinking, I'm going to add 30 people a day because 10 isn't enough. Like, I'm building a market from scratch. 10 a day is too slow. It's too slow because it's going to impede me. It's going to hurt me because then later when I do send outs, I'll have less people to send out to. So everything's interconnected. That's the thing with these KPIs. They're all connected. If I'm only adding 10 managers a day, that's only 10 people that I can call and pitch meetings to. If I add 30 a day, now I have 30 people that I can find where they are, call them, and pitch them a meeting. You see, so managers added is a very important KPI, and especially if you're full desk and you're trying to build a clientele. And so 10 a day, get out of here. Like, it's a joke. 30 a day. Try 30 a day. So that's what I did. So I did 30 a day for like weeks. For weeks, I was like 30 a day, 30 a day. That's how I built my client book relatively quickly. And by that time, you start getting recs in the door. And another KPI output that you're looking for is you want to land, ideally, I think at the time, it was like 4 recs a week or something like that. Something like 2 to 4 recs a week, which I know is aggressive. But that could mean like 2 jobs with 1 manager too, right? So it was like you need to land at least 2 to 4 new recs a week. And the idea there is that you want a pipeline. You don't want to not have enough jobs coming in, right? So having 2 to 4 like recs a week is also a pretty important KPI. As I'm talking, I'm like starting to remember more and more of my KPIs. But the 2 to 4 new jobs a week keeps you honest because then it's like, oh, I better hustle and get more recs. So that's another very strong rec. Some people tell me, oh, I signed 10 clients up in a whole year. I'm like, oh God, that's like so few, right? You're supposed to do 2 to 4 a week. So 10 clients a year is nothing to brag about. That isn't a lot, right? If you want to bill a lot of money, you need a lot more than 10 clients a year. That's 1 a month, right? Less than 1 a month. So 2 to 4 new jobs a week is what top billers strive to achieve. That's very aggressive. I know it's very aggressive. Anyways, so back to what I did. I added 30 managers a day for a very long time. And then eventually you run out of managers to add because there are only so many managers. Seriously, if you're doing this every day, 30 times 300 days in a year, that's like 9,000, I think, if I'm doing the math right? So at a certain point, depending on how many people are actually in your niche market, you might actually run out of people to add. And that's what kind of happened. Year 3, I was not adding 10 managers a day. You couldn't even find 10 managers a day because the market was already built out. Right? So when you're starting a recruitment desk, it's very different than maintaining a recruitment desk because the numbers of people are different. In the beginning, your activity has to be so much higher because there's so much untapped territory. All right. So the next one, meetings. Remember my account managers, my manager told me, not account managers, my manager, direct manager told me I need 5 meetings a week. I said double it, 10 a week. I want to meet 10 people a week. So what did I start doing to do 10 a week? I started meeting people on weekends. On weekends, I would drive to Jersey. Take candidates out, take them out for lunch, coffees, whatever I had to do. I would go on weekends. Many, many weekends I spent in Jersey. And I would just drive out there because I'm like, there's nothing more important than my career. There's nothing more important than billing money at this stage of my life. So I had made a commitment to do that. So 10 a week is my goal. So I would tell clients, Monday, I would come in Monday and I would canvas and prospect. And I would tell clients and candidates, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be in Jersey. Or Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to be in Jersey. I would just like start lining up meetings. I would get 10 a week. So that's another example where I doubled up on the KPI. As for dials and phone times, minimum 2 hours a day. Minimum 2 hours a day. You want to hit at least 2 hours. Some of my conversations, some of my days, I would even hit 4 hours. Just depends, what day it was and what I was doing. But yeah, absolutely 2 hours minimum a day should be easy to hit, especially if you're trying to have real conversations with people and every call does last more than 10 minutes. Now, I don't know how people do their job if you're having a call for less than half an hour. Like if I really want to vet a candidate, it takes me at least 40 minutes. Establish rapport, get all the information I need, sell them the recs that I think would be applicable. All these things take time. It takes time to get to know a candidate. I can't do it in 10 minutes. And if a candidate wants me off the phone in 10 minutes, that's not a candidate for me. I'm not working with that person. You better be able to have a real conversation with people. Otherwise, I can't place you, right? If you're only willing to speak to me at 5 minutes at a time, I'm not signing on to that. That is not someone I can place, right? So you have to have real conversations with your candidates, and real conversations will take longer than 10 minutes. So having 2 hours phone times a day is very, very achievable. Other ones, hitting 8 interviews a week. Some weeks I would get 12, right? Like one month I had $226,000 worth of starters in 1 month. I made $60,000 that month, right? And that month, I think like the months preceding that, I was able to get like 10 interviews a week. Once you start getting into double-digit interviews a week, you are going to have a monstrosity of a year, like for real. Like it's going to be great. So having that is also really, really awesome. Being able to hit your KPIs, being able to exceed your KPIs is really critical. So those are the main ones. As for sendouts, I talk a lot about this on my MPC course that I just released on agencyrecruitmentacademy.com. And the MPC course really tells you what I did differently, which really was editing people's resumes, making them look amazing, sending out amazing product, and writing really good emails. I mean, it's just is that simple. It's like, I don't understand why all these people online are trying to like basically make up stories about how recruitment is done when it's that simple. Like it's just MPCing, and then you cold call them after, right? That goes back to the 100 dials and the 2 hours phone times, and then the meetings. You got to go meet these clients and candidates. A lot of people are just like, oh, put up a post. And I saw a ridiculous one the other day. Somebody was like, oh, I had a client who also had diabetes and responded to my post about diabetes. And then we were able to make millions of dollars off of them. I was like, what kind of lies are these? Like, that's not common. Not everybody has diabetes, and not every client has diabetes. Like, the odds of that happening is so slim. For people to irresponsibly sell that as like a method is insane to me. Like, what are you going to do? Like, act like you have a bunch of illnesses? Like, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous what some of these recruitment trainers are talking about outside, when this is what works. You add people to your system, you manage them in your CRM, you cold call them, you sell to them, you get them MPCs. This is just pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. And it absolutely like pisses me off when people are like, oh, wait, no, instead of doing all of this, which obviously takes effort, why don't you just start pumping out videos? I mean, that kind of sort of helps, but it's not your be all end all. You still have to call. You still have to talk to candidates and stuff, right? So I do think that it's important to look at your KPIs, to sit down and realize what you're doing too little of, because if you're not hitting 2 hour phone times, this is an engagement job. You need to be talking to people, and you can't sell someone through email. You just can't. People aren't going to just send you an MSA and agree. That's just insane. Like, everything is done through the phone or in person. This is pretty standard recruitment 101. So you have to keep that in mind. Like, the most important KPIs are volume of clients to reach out to, and then how often are you talking to them? How often are they listening to you? How often are they engaging with you, aka buying from you, and getting that process going where you can then hit your holy grail of KPIs, which is interviews. At the end, that 8 interviews per week is ultimately what decides your year. If you're not doing 8 interviews a week, you're just not going to bill over $500,000. Like, you need at least 8 interviews a week to bill over $500,000. So these are the numbers that you kind of have to keep in mind, and all of it's interconnected. Every single recruitment market is going to be different, but these are some core KPIs that really do matter. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know, but these are the ones that come top of my head when I think about like the days that I had to really build out desks. These were the KPIs I stuck with, and I remember them so clearly because I've done it, and it was a lot of work, but that is what it took. Nowadays, you can add some additional KPIs if you are trying to do more social media advertising, for instance. You can add some new KPIs for yourself, such as 1 post a day on LinkedIn. That's a KPI. You can also say, I'm going to put 1 job ad post per day on LinkedIn. That's another KPI. Those are 2 slightly different KPIs. One is a company, business, market focused post. The other one is here is a job rec advertisement. So these are different types of KPIs. You can come up with whatever you'd like. Another KPI that I personally set up for myself was like 1 client event every half a year. So I would set up actual client meetings and client events. So that's another KPI that you can set for yourself. There are just an unlimited amount of business development ideas, and even like candidate events. You can set one up every 4 months. It's totally up to you. And these are the things that you're going to use to drive your business forward, to use as business development tools to talk to your niche market about. So keep in mind, what you're willing to do, how you're going to tie it all together, and ultimately, what are the KPIs that are going to drive your business forward, and keep yourself tight to it. Once you start billing loads and loads of money, you can start slacking. But till you start billing loads and loads of money, you kind of have to stick with these KPIs. It kind of takes a while. It's not going to happen overnight, just like losing weight, right? Like going back to that example, you have to keep working out if you want to get really toned arms. There is no shortcut. There's no like liposuction for recruitment, right? So for recruitment, if you want to get your results, you have to do the work, and it takes time. It takes time to talk to clients day 1. They don't want to move forward. Talk to them month 2. They don't want to move forward. Talk to them again, month 3. Oh, wouldn't you know it? Now they need to hire. Perfect. Right? So these things just take time, and the relationships you're building today are going to manifest into money tomorrow. It could just be 1 week from now. It could be 8 months from now. It just really depends. It's not set in stone. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that at the end of the day, you are the person that is in control of your business. Your managers, your company, your employer might give you some basic KPIs to follow, and hopefully they're knowledgeable enough to know what KPIs are a minimum standard, but the rest is up to you. This is why when people ask me, oh, am I going to get more support at another recruitment firm? I'm like, not really, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to do the job. Nobody else is going to do any of this stuff for you. Like, no recruitment firm is out there adding managers to the system for you. That's not their job. Like, they're not going to hire someone who's going to just do your job. You have to do your job. So a lot of this stuff is manual. It's manual because you have to figure out who are the hiring managers. And there's no such AI tool that can do that right now. Even AI needs to be taught how to do that. AI might not even understand the difference between different roles and hiring manager levels, and who is actually the person that is responsible for hiring. And even AI may not know that stuff, right? So at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is very manual, and it's better that you do it yourself, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a call with a candidate or a client one day, and they're going to ask you, hey, you're going to have a conversation, and all of a sudden you're going to talk about some random company. If you market map out your own contacts and you've been trying to reach these people, you would likely remember their names. So then when you talk to someone in your industry, you're actually going to whip out their names. Be like, oh, like that person from that company. If you outsource this to some list, and you buy a list, you're not going to remember those names. So how many times have I impressed people in our networks because I was able to recall who I market mapped? I was like, oh, like that person at that firm. And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? It's like, oh, I just know everybody in this industry. It's all in your brain. It's all in your head, right? It's hard to say, but at least those are my experiences. I'm very much old school. I think that a lot of the work that needs to be done you have to earn it. You do have to spend time to build your network correctly. You do have to spend time to understand your KPIs, to design your KPIs, to live to the ethos of what the KPI system is meant to do for you. It's not meant to hurt you. It's meant to help you. And a lot of junior recruiters, you need to be at least doing it so that you can get to a certain degree of success. Like you, even hitting the minimums, you might just become like average, right? You have to exceed it if you want to become a top biller, because that's the nature of competition. Other people who are more hungry are going to be doing that. And that's the world we live in. We work in a competitive environment. Other people will want to hustle as well. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me at dz@dondazoo.com. But I hope you take the time to really figure out your KPI strategy. Obviously, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. So if you need that, give me a shout as well.